Hello there, this is Coden.
And this is Cassia.
And welcome to the Ebon Hawk, a podcast where we discuss the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic games and proposed movie adaptations, as well as Star Wars news. Today we'll be talking about Knights of the Old Republic's Mission Vao and the latest episode of The Mandalorian, and our thoughts on the sequel trilogy and the Rise of Skywalker. This is episode 8, and this is where the salt begins.
So our mission, should you choose to accept it, and we accepted it, is to talk about one of Revan's companions in KotOR named Mission Vao. She was a Twi'lek. She was a street urchin living in Terrace during the Mandalorian Wars and the first half of the Jedi Civil War. She was best friends with the Wookiee Zalabar, and she is a scoundrel class, and she helps you get through the lower levels of Terrace and off of the planet, and she accompanies you throughout the first Knights of the Old Republic. Some interesting things about her background is originally they saw her as a male character, but then they decided it might just be a little bit more interesting if she's like a teenage girl. When I was playing Knights of the Old Republic, I was kind of a similar age, so I kind of liked the character of Mission. Sometimes she could be a little annoying because cute and annoying kind of share a corner, you know, but for the most part, like I thought she was a fun character. And the Mission and Zalabar duo, it kind of reminds you of Han Solo and Chewbacca. One Easter egg about her name is like, I think it was kind of based off of Mission Viejo, California. She had a brother who, this is her tragic backstory, who, according to her, like when she was 12, left her on Terrace for a Twi'lek dancer named Lena. And he said, one day I'm going to make it big and come back for you. That kind of reminds me of like Rey's story a bit. How like she thought her parents were going to come back for her. But when you're on Tatooine, it's revealed that Lena didn't want to leave without Mission, and Griff was the one who wanted to leave her behind. So you get to help Mission navigate that family drama. So that's kind of like her backstory, and then she's just kind of friends with Zalabar. What were your thoughts on Mission?
I think my first impressions with Mission was, what was she doing down in the depths of Terrace in the first place? And with all of what was going on in the depths of Terrace with the rat ghouls, how did she manage to not be infected like the rest of the population was just succumbing to? Because there didn't seem like there was like a prevention, but there wasn't a cure down there. And so they would just kind of quarantine those that would get infected, and they would turn into rat ghouls and either be shot by the perimeter defense, or they would go down into the further depths of Terrace. And that's where you meet Mission and Zalabar, is kind of down in there. And they help you navigate through the tunnels and bypass a Rancor and then out the other side. That's about as much exposure as I really had with Mission and Zalabar. Once we got to the Ebon Hawk, I just kind of, here's your bedroom, and you're going to stay there until I call for you. And then I never went back.
Aw, so sad. It would be interesting to see Mission in a movie. I wonder if they would actually go like 14 or kind of like older. If I were to have the character of Mission in a movie or series or whatnot, I kind of think like after Tatooine or Kashyyyk, I would maybe have Zalabar and Mission stay on one of those planets and maybe come back for the final battle against the Wishes of Revan, because I don't think going on the quest for the Star Forge is any place for a 14-year-old girl, even if like she thinks she can take care of herself and has a Wookiee protector. I would feel weird about like having like a, maybe she doesn't have any other family, but I would want to make sure she was protected, you know? And I think like having as many companions as you do in the game just wouldn't work for a movie. Kind of like bringing in different characters and maybe like having some characters go off and do their own thing would make for a better movie experience.
Yeah, and being the age that she is, I mean, even if they went back to Zalbar's homeworld, Kashyyyk, I mean, she doesn't really belong there either. Kashyyyk is a very like hostile territory where the Wookiees are kind of the premium species there. As you go deeper and deeper into the forests and to the undergrowth, just other giant monsters live down there. It's amazing that in the Clone Wars that the clones were able to navigate Kashyyyk as well as the battle droids through that homeworld. So it is a good point of where would Mission sit that would like accommodate her if it wasn't Coruscant even.
I think after you resolve Kashyyyk, you reinstate Zalbar and his family as the rightful leaders. So I feel like Mission, if she were to stick with Zalbar, they'd be in a good spot for a while. They wouldn't have to go to the lower depths of the forest of Kashyyyk, but if she can survive the lower levels of Terrace, I think she would be fine. One interesting aspect that I learned about Mission is I think she is like the number one like light-sided character in your party, contrasted with I believe HK47 or Candrass as like they're the ultimate like dark characters in your party. And if your Revan chose to turn to the dark side, they can kill Mission, and you can convince Zalbar to do it, or they are both killed off. And that's just a dark turn for that character, because she's just so full of life, and she's just a fun 14-year-old kid, and then she dies. It's kind of like Anakin killing the younglings, kind of a situation.
Yeah, I can't quite remember how you can get Zalbar to do it for you. I think what ends
it's just like persuade.
Is it a force persuade? I was thinking that maybe you had saved Zalbar, you did something for Zalbar that caused him to, because they do the whole life debt thing, so
it's just if you have enough like of a persuasion skill and enough influence with Zalbar that you can convince him to do it.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of messed up if you don't even take over that life debt tag from him and Mission to have him kind of go back on that and kill her. That is pretty dark.
So how I hope it would be handled in the movies is that Revan does not turn dark, and Mission gets to live with her friend Big Z, and they're happy on Kashyyyk or Tatooine or Coruscant or, you know, a random planet. Or maybe they just like kind of evoke Han Solo and Chewbacca and just get their own ship, you know, and just kind of go planet to planet being scoundrels. That's how I would want to see it.
Yeah, I don't know. As I've kind of mentioned, I haven't really paid much attention to Mission and Zalbar, so if they just kind of came in, checked in, and then just kind of checked out, I don't know.
It's worth a thought. But speaking of Twi'lek siblings and having unresolved family issues, let's move on to The Mandalorian.
As Cassia mentioned, we'll now be moving on to The Mandalorian spoilers. As a reminder, if you would like to remain spoiler-free, please prepare to make the calculations to the next segment. Unlike our previous episodes, we have a couple more segments to cover before closing out this one, so be sure to tune back in at 18 minutes and 45 seconds. Flying is not just for droids, so prepare the jump to hyperspace.
What'd you think of this episode?
A lot of people liked it. Some people did not like it. Because I think a lot of people liked that it was action-packed. And I think a lot of people, when they were seeing teasers for The Mandalorian, they thought it was going to be like a super mature, dark take with a whole lot of action on the Star Wars universe. And that's not quite what we got. We got like kind of like a Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, Baby Yoda show. So I don't think I loved this episode. But what did you think?
I did think that the episode was a bit out of character. For the most part, it was the show leading up to this point has been child friendly and had a lot of mild humor mixed with the more kind of darker theme of who the Mandalorian is. With this latest episode, they have one of the things that really bugged me was this Twi'lek that they have in there that's just incredibly sadistic throughout the entire episode, and it became annoying every time you saw her. It was just like 10-second skip, 10 seconds skip.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of a tonal inconsistency with the show. Like, I don't know quite what they're going for in this first season.
Yeah, with some of the feedback that I've been looking at, I watch the Twitter feeds, and some of the people that I communicate with from time to time who have started loving the Mandalorian kind of came to this episode and were just like, you know what, I'm getting a little bored of the Mandalorian. And so I pushed back and was like, well, what's your reasoning? Just kind of curious. And they're just like, there doesn't seem to be a big picture in the at least in season 1. And that each individual episode is really good, but because there isn't something that it's building off of, it's almost becoming a point of, well, do I really care about what happens next, because it doesn't seem like it's going to be answering what's been happening already. And that's kind of the thoughts that have been kind of coming my way as far as what I've been reading up on.
It just seems like we're kind of done with TV shows that are like Monster of the Week or Crime of the Week, that kind of genre. We're kind of more into like the grand overarching story leading up to something. And that remains to be seen, like what happens in the episodes after this in 7 and 8. I would hope that it at least foreshadows something big happening in season 2. I'm kind of expecting a big cliffhanger in episode 8, because or else a whole lot of people, and I think Disney knows this, are just have Disney Plus for The Mandalorian, so they really want to have like a hook, line, and sinker into viewers. So I'm guessing there will be a big cliffhanger. So I hope that 7 and 8 give us a big taste, something different, something to keep us interested.
Yeah, there's this TV show that I used to watch all the time too, where there was like little bits and pieces of build up throughout the season, but then like the major build up episodes were the last 4 or so episodes of that particular season, and then the season finale, or I guess the resolution to the season finale was the first 2 episodes of the following season. And so yeah, kind of what you're saying with like, hopefully they can really build something up good with these last couple episodes, because if they don't, season 2 is going to come out and people are going to be asking that same question that they did just a little over a month ago of, is The Mandalorian at season 2 going to be worth that Disney Plus subscription?
So what happens in this episode is the Mandalorian's ship, the Razor Crest, is worse for wear. So he goes to a space station owned by Ran, who is played by Mark Boone Jr. And Ran says, "You're welcome here. We just need your help with a job with a crew you used to work with." And apparently the Mandalorian used to be kind of more of a bad dude, you know? Baby Yoda has changed him for the better, I suppose. So the team is made up of Mayfeld, played by Bill Burr, and Sion, the Twi'lek, was was unfamiliar to me until I learned that she was Natalia Tena, who played Tonks in the Harry Potter series. And then I kind of liked her character a little bit more. But while I was watching it, like, I never really had a character bother me as much as she did. I just felt like they were trying to be like a Harley Quinn wannabe, but after I figured out it was Natalia Tena, I was like, oh, she's just, trying to channel, Bellatrix Lestrange. And then Clancy Brown, who also did the voice for Savage Opress, who is Darth Maul's brother, played Berg, the kind of devil character. I mean, he's not actually a devil, but, he looks like a devil. And then the droid Zero was voiced by Richard Ayoade, and Quinn was played by Ismael Cruz Cordova. And there are some fun Easter eggs as well. Matt Lanter, who played, or actually he voiced Anakin Skywalker in Clone Wars and Rebels, was the New Republic soldier with the egg helmet. And Dave Filoni, Rick Famuyiwa, and Deborah Chow were the X-Wing fighters at the end of the episode. So it was full of, some fun Easter eggs. So it's basically like Suicide Squad, but with like bounty hunters. They have to get a prisoner who ends up being Quinn, the brother of the character Xeon. They need to get him off of a New Republic prison ship. But of course, that doesn't go to plan. But the Mandalorian, when he gets double-crossed, he proves that he is awesome, and he gets out of jail and delivers his bounty and leaves the others in jail. So it's a fun action episode. I just kind of did not love the supporting characters, but at least Baby Yoda had some fun hijinks on the ship. That was a nice sweet spot.
Yeah, I think my favorite parts of that episode was I liked how the episode started. I liked meeting of the crew, and then I liked when the Mandalorian was coming back from the raid, bringing the Twi'lek back to the guy with the tracking beacon. And so the two X-Wings come out of hyperspace and blow the facility up as Mandalorian kind of flies away. And he turns to Baby Yoda and is just like, yep, that was a bad idea.
That was funny.
Yeah, like there were pieces of that episode that were like, yeah, that's pretty good. It's too bad that we don't know why he's doing these jobs from point to point, because earlier we're thinking that he's looking for a place that he can set Baby Yoda down for good, but it almost sounds like our earlier theories are coming true, that it's Mando and the Baby Yoda.
It's the galaxy.
Yep. So the banner for season 2 is going to be little Yoda in his little force pose, and then the Mando over the top just taking aim on something that they're going to gun down, and I don't know.
We'll see
just
how
messing.
episode 7, which it actually debuts this week, Wednesday, and it's going to have a teaser for episode 9. So 10 for 10 marketing, Disney. So we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, marketing for the Star Wars movie coming out later this week.
All right, before we discuss the upcoming Rise of Skywalker, we want to welcome back our listeners who decided to skip our last segment. We're just going to tell you now, your calculations were correct. There's just no Alderaan. You are right back here with us. Anyway, moving on.
So speaking of episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, maybe let's talk some of the characters, the journeys they've been on so far, and where we think it's going. Let's just say, heads up, none of us have seen the leaks, so this is just us speculating for ourselves. Maybe let's start out with Rey. When we find her in episode 7, she is on Jakku, waiting for her parents, and then she finds BB-8 and Finn, and then they meet Han Solo, and then she is taken prisoner by Kylo Ren, and then she discovers that she can use the Force, and she does use that Force, like, super freakishly well. And then she beats Kylo Ren in a duel somehow, and then she goes to meet Luke Skywalker, and then Luke Skywalker is kind of a disappointment, and then whatever is happening between Rey and Kylo and those Force visions happens. She confronts Snoke with Kylo Ren, and they take him down, and the Praetorian Guards together, and then Kylo's like, let's rule the galaxy together, and she's like, no! And then she goes off and does her own thing. What do you think Rey is going to do in episode 9?
I don't know. Just from what the trailers are saying, I don't know what could possibly be her motivation from hopping from system to system. But obviously in her travels, I think the Dark Rey thing is a thing. I don't know if they would really want to waste that much footage on just like a misleading. But I think that through her travels, she's going to encounter a presence of Palpatine who is going to kind of twist her into lining up some events towards a later scheme. As we know, Emperor Palpatine's pro at scheming, from taking the Republic, moving into the Empire to dominate the galaxy. Now he's added it again with some other motivation that we're yet to find out. I think that's a lot with what Rey's going to be dealing with, and somehow that's going to tangle with Kylo Ren's motivations, and maybe Kylo Ren is also being puppeted by Emperor Palpatine and is being used in maybe a different direction to bring about this end goal, this unknown end goal. From the trailers, we see Kylo Ren looks like he's alone for the most part, except maybe with a couple loyal followers. And he encounters a fleet of Star Destroyers possibly, so maybe he's looking for a way to rebuild like his own Imperial style fleet and faction, where Rey is maybe just exploring the Force and becoming maybe the true heir to the Sith, maybe, as Emperor Palpatine would want a strong successor that he never really got.
Yeah, those are some interesting thoughts. Like, what I see happening is Rey's gonna succeed because she succeeded, in 7 and 8. Like, why would she fail now? I would like her to turn to the dark side for more than 5 minutes and have some struggles. But I kind of see her leading the next generation of Jedi.
We'll see about that. We already kind of saw their perspective of the next generation of Jedi and how they wanted to leave it to the Force, as Jedi Fallen Order has its beliefs. So
I think there should be a Jedi Order, and if they don't have one, that's stupid. So, Kylo Ren, compared to the second sister in Jedi Fallen Order, I just kind of think, as much as I think like Adam Driver has portrayed him very well, I just kind of feel like the second sister made me empathize with the fallen tragic antagonist a whole lot better. Kylo Ren just seems like an angry man baby, and it just seems like we are seeing episode 3 Anakin going to episode 6 Anakin, but we don't really see the build-up that made him that way, at least to enough of an extent so I understand him.
One thing I wanted to bring up with Kylo is, after watching The Last Jedi and not knowing what was going to come up with Rise of Skywalker, I was really hoping that Kylo was going to step in the shoes of being the ultimate antagonist of the Force Awakens trilogy. It was disappointment to me to hear that they're bringing Emperor Palpatine back as like the overarching puppet master, because that leads any buildup that Kylo really has to kind of just a dead end, from the last movie of subverting expectations, which is, I think, a bummer for Kylo Ren's character, as well as like a really good ending plot for this movie. I think that I would have liked to see Kylo Ren, the character of Kylo Ren, taking over the First Order and using it to his own devices.
I think he is like taking it over, but I honestly never saw the last Skywalker turning evil and being killed off. I always thought Kylo was going to be redeemed, and I don't know why they would humanize him as much as they do and just show him that he looks like, Adam Driver and is sad and tortured, and he's shirtless unless they were going to redeem him. I do think they should have left Palpatine dead, because it kind of like breaks canon and makes Return of the Jedi feel a little bit pointless, and they should have just maybe had like Snoke or some other villain that they hinted at, in 7 and 8. And I don't think that Palpatine was hinted at in 7 and 8, but it does seem that they're trying to retroactively say that, yeah, Snoke was Palpatine. Palpatine influenced Luke to murder his nephew, So I don't really like that.
One thing that was an interesting development and kind of a lead up possible point of the Rise of Skywalker was with the death of Snoke. You have two relatively powerful individuals. You had Kylo Ren and you had General Hux. And with the death of Snoke, there's a point where you see Hux check on Kylo to see if he's dead, and he reaches for his blaster. But when Kylo Ren comes to and is like fully awake, he hurries and puts his coat back, suggesting that he's going to finish off Kylo Ren. What would have been interesting is if instead of bringing Emperor Palpatine back, if they explored kind of how I mentioned earlier, where maybe Hux does assume full control of the First Order as the highest ranking official at that point, finding a way to push Kylo Ren out into exile where he only has his major supporters to rebuild and either fight back against the First Order, but also not with the Resistance, and to try and regain the power that he once had with Snoke in power.
I think Kylo Ren is going to be redeemed as Ben Solo, and then he gon' die. But I think he could be redeemed and live, because let's just face it, like, Harrison Ford wanted to die. Like, that's why I didn't really hold it against Kylo Ren as much as others. As they came out of 7, I was like, well, Harrison Ford kind of convinced them. And it's kind of sad that Disney listened to Harrison Ford, who didn't care about Star Wars, and then didn't listen to Mark Hamill, who loved Star Wars. But alas, we'll see what happens with Kylo Ren. Palpatine, we kind of touched on this, but my prediction is gasp. He's gonna die again, And I think Rey and Kylo are gonna defeat him together. I just wonder how they're gonna explain he survived.
From what we touched on, or I guess what we'll be touching on a little bit, when a Sith dies, if they try and live through the Force, they end up attaching to something or someone to basically feed off of. So a theory that I kind of brewed up is it's possible that Palpatine may be living through the mask of Darth Vader, the charred mask of Darth Vader. And what we saw in the trailer of both Kylo and Rey destroying the mask of Darth Vader is in turn destroying what's left of Emperor Palpatine.
I think we are definitely going to see Ian McDiarmid in the flesh again. So I'm excited for that. But you definitely think he's going to die for real this time?
Yeah, I'd hope so.
Yeah. He better be dead. I just wanted to bring up Finn. I think he's the greatest missed opportunity of this trilogy, because he was raised as a stormtrooper and he turned away, but he's not really used for anything except for yelling after Rey and for comic relief. And I think that John Boyega is a great actor, and they could be doing so much more with him.
I think what we've discussed before with Finn is I think Finn would have been a much more powerful character if they combined him with Poe Dameron and just had those two characters portrayed only as one character, and just kind of like split the difference of who they were to create a more fleshed out individual. And I think either actor would have portrayed the character fine, but the character themselves would have been a lot more intriguing and fun to follow if they were one and the same.
There's just so many characters in this trilogy, and I'm not sure who the main trio is supposed to be. If it's supposed to be Poe, Finn, and Rey, or if it's supposed to be Rey, Kylo, and Finn, or Rose, Finn, and Rey, or whatnot, you know? And then we're getting new characters like Zori Bliss and Xana in episode 9, so there's even more cooks in the kitchen now. But one thing I wanted to bring up is that John Boyega seems to be unleashed right now. Like, he's really coming into his own. And out of like all of the actors in the sequel trilogy, I would want to hang out with him the most. He just has a fun Instagram profile. He's making light of the press tour. He pretended to interview himself, and it was just like one of the most hilarious things I've seen. And he actually gave his thoughts on The Last Jedi. And he said this, and I'm quoting it. It says, "The Force Awakens, I think, was the beginning of something quite solid. The Last Jedi, if I'm being honest, I'd say that was feeling a bit iffy for me," Boyega said. "I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of the choices in that, and that's something that I spoke to Mark Hamill a lot about, and we had conversations about it. And it was hard for all of us because we were separated." So I have to give him props for, like, kind of being the first to speak his mind.
Technically, he was the second, but of the main like trio or 5 group.
Of the main trio, you know, sequel, the most prominent ones that Disney pushed to the forefront, I would say.
Yeah, I think as we're kind of talking about is that, I mean, it was like a missed opportunity. Like, you see a lot of growth in his character with The Force Awakens, and in The Last Jedi, he's halted and even regresses a little bit. And in the end, when he's about to smash into the Death Star tech laser and get saved for no real reason other than love, which they had to completely work around to even survive that because of that decision. I don't know, that there's a lot of characters that really got the short end of the stick with The Last Jedi.
Yeah, and I think he is the one who definitely got, even in The Force Unleashed, he never really had a chance to do anything that he would regret. Because they just say, oh, he was a janitor. His first mission, he couldn't do it, you know? And, like, it's kind of like having your cake and eating it too. It's like, oh, we want to have a stormtrooper, but he's like, not that kind of stormtrooper. He's just, you know, a pure soul, you know? But I think it would be, you would have more to work with if, like, he did stuff he regretted. Or if he was close friends with Kylo Ren and then he had to turn his back on the First Order and he joined the Resistance because it was the right thing to do, you know? That gives him more to work with. And I think that John Boyega would have been great to play that.
I think his turning point was watching his buddy stormtrooper die, and you know, they had the bloody hand go across the face mask, and it was all traumatizing, and that's what they explained to cause Poe to flip sides, which I don't know, if he'd been the First Order that long, that must have been his first combat experience.
I think you said Poe, but you meant Finn.
Oh, okay. It would have been Finn's like first combat experience if that was his reaction. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense.
We'll see what happens with Finn, but my prediction is he is not going to be in a relationship with Rose anymore, and I think something may happen with Xana. I think he's going to live and become a prominent leader in the New Republic. So, Poe was not meant to survive the first act of The Force Awakens. And now he's one of the main members of the trio. In 7, he's in there for about 5 minutes, I would say. And in 7, you just see he's a super good pilot. He's good at obeying orders. And in 8, he is a super good pilot, and he is not good at following orders. And then in 9, I'm guessing he will continue to be a really good pilot. And maybe he will obey half the orders and then not obey half the orders. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. And I think he'll live and become the new General Leia.
That's the other predicament that this movie has, is that all of the Resistance leadership is dead. Some more dead than others. You got Carrie Fisher that's passed away, but you have Admiral Akbar that was, rushed out the cockpit and couldn't use the Force to get back to the ship, along with everybody else that was in there. I think Mon Mothma was in there. You had probably General Madine that was in there. All these guys, they just died. You had the other.
Basically, at the end of The Last Jedi, there was like 12 people on the ship, and that's your new Resistance or Rebellion or whatever we're calling it now.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the only one that's going to have real screen space as the leader of the Resistance is Poe Dameron, and they are bringing Wedge Antilles back in. So I forget his actor name, but he was never a major leader. He was essentially the Poe Dameron. He was the pseudo leader of Rogue Squadron when Luke Skywalker wasn't part of the squadron. So he has seniority over Poe Dameron, but not necessarily rank, unless there's a lot of lore that Disney puts out talking about how Wedge progresses after Return of the Jedi.
The actor for Wedge Antilles is named Dennis Lawson, and I believe he is the uncle of Ewan McGregor, who plays Obi-Wan in episodes 1, 2, and 3, and the upcoming Kenobi spinoff on Disney+.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
I think Poe's gonna survive. The Resistance will. I think I'm pretty safe saying that I think the good guys are gonna win, in the final battle. And peace will be restored in the galaxy. Maybe they'll merge with the First Order through the power of love and friendship and hope and goodness. Or maybe the First Order will just be totally beaten somehow. But what do you think will happen?
I think that they'll find a new super weapon out in the middle of that nebula, and they'll find a way to expose its weakness, fly down that trench, throw a torpedo down the middle of it, and kaboom, and the First Order is destroyed.
That baby up. Just like it happened in
just like the old days.
1, episode 4, and episode 6. So, yep. But one thing I wanted to touch on is that I heard the entire soundtrack for episode 9 has been leaked.
It wasn't leaked, it was released, but the track titles are spoilers to the events of the movie.
Yeah, which seems, kind of like an oversight, no matter if it was released legally or illegally. So,
definitely an oversight.
I'm not seeing it on iTunes.
No, not there. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Because I think it was released, like, someone leaked it online and it's all available, because it's not available through, like, iTunes. You just have to be looking for it. Like,
it's on Spotify.
That seems stupid.
They released the tracks, and of course they're going to have the names of the tracks associated with what they're about. And I'm going to exit out of this because I actually haven't seen that yet. But my thought process on it is, you're not going to find it unless you go looking for it. And so why are all these people mad that they found it and are now spoiled when, if they weren't looking for it?
I guess some people, though, are just, like, on Instagram or Facebook, and then some idiot, like, posts it, and, like, they can't, like, unsee it,
Yeah, and I get that. They did that with Game of Thrones with Ned Stark dying in season 1, and they just, like, people would post it on Facebook, and it ruined it for thousands of people. So, I mean, that can happen. If someone doesn't want to have these types of spoilers, especially like a soundtrack spoiler, which is really weird.
It's an oversight, and Disney should be more on top of that, because they are such a big company and they can do that. And also, It seems like with episode 7, basically all of the episode 7 was known. Like, people knew online, like, what was going to happen before it came out. And it seems like episode 9 is pretty much leaked, because a lot of, like, I haven't seen the leaks, but it seems like a lot of people are saying they're seeing some things from the leaks come to fruition in some of the teaser trailers and whatnot.
Yeah,
Seems
one of
like
which
it-
is the Kylo Ren grabbing a bunch of followers and looking for Star Destroyers.
But there weren't that many leaks for episode 8, so it makes it seem like it might be more of J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot, which is in the bad, pun, than maybe like Disney. I think the Bad Robot ship needs to be examined for leaks. We'll see it in a couple days, and hopefully no one spoils it for us. And then we thought we'd close out with a viewer question. And then do you want to give it an answer, Coden?
We'll do our best. We've kind of taken a look at some of these, and we're not totally sure what you already know, but we'll answer to the best of our abilities.
So this is from Tyler3564. He says, please commentate on what the Sith holocrons behind Atris were doing. What did they speak and what did they say?
So a holocron, for those that are tuning in that don't know, is a device or artifact that can only be accessed using the Force. And so what this question is referring to is a artifact or this holocron that is specific to the Sith, belonging to the Sith Lord Atris. So it looks like what they're wanting to know is like, what did it say? And through all the research that we can find, at least that I went digging for, was that there isn't like an actual script or text that comes along with these Sith holocrons. What they do say is that when an individual that it's not meant for tries to access these holocrons, all they hear are like screams or wailing or other unnatural, painful expressions from different species. And that's all that they really can get out of it. From my understanding, they could have approached it to the perspective of who the holocrons were meant for, but all the material that we're finding is very specific to the inability to read them. So very similar to Maz's a good question for another time kind of mentality for BioWare's perspective of these holocrons.
The gist I got is that they're Sith holocrons. They're trying to turn like someone who is very susceptible to falling to fall to the dark side. So they're probably just preying upon her personal weaknesses and foibles, because she admired the exile so much and she thought she went to the dark side, and she just thought she was so good and the Jedi were so right. She was susceptible to the Sith holocrons and they preyed upon her weakness, and she turned to the dark side.
Yeah, it could have been like what the holocrons were saying, because the holocrons essentially is like Force-contained message, but it is a stagnant message. So in the Jedi Temple, for example, it contains a library filled with both Jedi and Sith holocrons containing mysteries of the Force. There are some holocrons that are available to the very ready learners, the Padawan level learners, and then there's some holocrons that are only available through the Master level or the Jedi Council level. And then there are forbidden holocrons, which are typically the Sith holocrons, where they're more meant to be vaulted and protected and not necessarily accessed.
Hopefully that answered your question, Tyler. And our viewers are always welcome to send us questions and suggestions, and we'll tackle them in our future episodes.
And speaking of which, this has been Coden.
This has been Cassia.
And you can find me on twitch.tv/CodenBon. I'm currently streaming Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Got my mic all set up, so that you
It's a
can,
good mic.
yeah, you can hear me just a little bit better. And I typically tend to tweet out when I go live. I only go live for like a couple hours or so. So just to keep your eyes open for that.
You can email us your comments and questions at ebonhawkpodcast@gmail.com. And you're also welcome to message us at ebonhawkpodcast on Instagram.
And our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Shorman. He can be found at https://alistairsounds.wixsite.com/Alistair Sounds. And our transition music was composed by Christian Walker, and he can be found at christianwalkermusic.com. This has been episode 8 of the Ebon Hawk. Take care of yourselves, meatbags, and may the force be with you. We'll be back later this week to discuss our thoughts on the Rise of Skywalker. And so, bye for now.